Hello and welcome back to Inspirability. In the second part, we continue our chat with psychologist, confidence and performance coach, Delphine Legat. And in terms of your clients that you have coming to you as well,
yes.
So is there a particular group that you tend to work with more?
So I tend to work more with women.
Is that because they come to you, or you find more women are open for coaching, or?
It's a bit of both. I think we are so primed to talk about our feelings, and you know, that's I call women the directors of human relations in all things, because we just bring people together. And it's not to say the boys don't, but I think they're learning to find their voice and to express themselves. I mean, this goes back to what we talked about before about naming the emotions. I think it's really difficult if you grow up in, I mean, my partner has grown up in he's a lad's lad in the least toxic way possible, but it has been intense training for the last 18 months to get him to talk about his feelings. And I go, so how do you feel this went? And he goes, oh, is it one of those conversations? I go, yes. And he goes, well, I've been upset about this, and this. I'm like, oh, this is amazing, because, you know, it's taken so long, but we're there. And I just think women, you know, you go, what's wrong? Like, oh, periods on, and oh, hair's greasy and clothes don't fit, and oh, you know, and it's just so much easier to have that conversation. So my clients tend to be women, and I do work with wider teams, and sometimes it's more about communication dynamics with wider teams, but with women it's more to do with imposter syndrome, confidence, asserting themselves, presenting themselves, a lot about how to be less feminine in the workplace, and I'm completely against that. I think you should be more feminine in the workplace, but those sorts of topics.
So let's talk about those topics then. Maybe you can give our viewers and listeners some takeaways with those, because
Sure.
they're really interesting topics. So let's first of all start with imposter syndrome.
Yes. So, shall I give a brief history of imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for anyone who's not familiar with what imposter syndrome is.
So it sort of started in the 1970s as being defined, and it was defined by two women I think it was psychology, called Clance and Imes, and they essentially described the state of women, or the state of uncertainty and insecurity that women felt moving from secretarial roles into other roles in the companies, essentially. And that makes complete sense for the time, because if you can imagine that they were always getting their bum slapped or dealing with the phone calls and not given very much responsibility and spoken down to in an environment where there was a very stark power dynamic between men and women, it would feel very uncomfortable moving into this new shift and asserting yourself when you haven't really been given the words, the tools, or the power before. And moving through the decades, I think people have attached the feeling of imposter syndrome, or the stress of uncertainty, onto the word imposter syndrome when it doesn't need to be there. Because what imposter syndrome is being new at something. And actually being new at something is really exciting. As you grow older, you have fewer first experiences or firsts. And so finding spaces where you can grow and learn and expand yourself and feel uncertainty, newness, beginnerness, and imposter syndrome is actually kind of a blessing. It's really exciting. So I would say every time you feel that sense of, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, ask questions, be the novice.
Embrace it.
Embrace it massively. I mean, it's the same with training. You know, I don't know how you felt at the beginning of the training program, but I looked at like, how am I going to do 30K on the weekend? And you start slow. You start slow.
Yeah.
Starts with buying the shoes, you know? I've bought my shoes, and apparently they're supposed to make me like a mountain goat, because I'm doing a trail marathon. So I'm very excited to unleash my inner mountain goat. But
yeah. And it's also what I've found with the marathon training is, not having come from a running background, I embraced it as something that I had never really understood why people go for a run.
Yes.
I thought, I'm mad. Why would you put yourself through it? But now I completely get it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's such a mind cleanse.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's breaking it down. So a 20K run doesn't seem as long if I'm checking my watch and looking at my paces.
Yes.
And targeting paces.
Yes.
And going, okay, well, this time last week when I did this run over this kilometre, I did it at this pace.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and take 10 seconds off that pace.
Yeah.
And breaking it down, small steps, but also just surrounding yourself with a support network.
Yes.
I'm lucky my husband's got massively into running, and he has a lot of running friends, and we have a lot of running friends.
Yeah.
So just talking to them about what do they find works for them, and just trying to get advice on those small areas where you can save that 1%, getting the right running shoes, getting your gait analysed, getting orthotics if you need them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just save and just, you know, and embracing something new.
You've beaten me to it. You don't need me here. Like, I don't need to be doing my job. This is amazing. I think it is, and it's exactly that, is breaking it down into the smallest chunks possible. Because I think when you're looking at the abyss and you're seeing this huge goal, this marathon, how am I going to do that? I've never done that before. How am I going to do it?
Have you done a marathon before?
I've done a half marathon. I've never done a marathon.
No,
and I said, well, I did the half marathon last year and I said, I'm never doing a marathon. Never doing a marathon. That's insane. And then we met and you said, I'm doing a marathon. I was like, insane. Sorry. And then I signed up for one and it's a trail marathon. I went, oh God. Always read the T's and C's, folks. Always read them. And I thought, and everyone said, you must cancel. You must. How are you going to do it? And I said, well, I'm going to do it. I'll just work it out. And so I think the key takeaway for anything new with imposter syndrome, you can't tame the beast until you understand it. So ask questions, be new, explore, be curious, and also break down in the main goal into as many baby steps as you're willing to take. So the first thing for me was research trainers, and then I learned that there is the difference between trail running shoes and road running shoes. I was like, okay, that's a useful distinction. Then going into companies that do trail running shoes, then go into shops and try them, then realize that you need to size up because when your foot or toe hits the front of the toe box, whatever it's called, it hurts and you get blisters. And then it's, well, I'm now going to download a training program and I'm going to have a look at energy and cycles and sync it all up. And then how much time am I going to give myself? Baby steps. Yeah. They're all so small and inconsequential. You can do them whenever.
And then you look back, you've done the marathon.
I'll let you know. I'll send you a message like, I've done it! On my mountain somewhere in the Peak District.
I'll be rooting for you. You have to let me know when it is.
Or you have to let me know when yours is. We can support each other. We'll sign up for the next one together. We'll do an ultra together. There we go.
I'm sure I've got that one in me. I think the other thing is also being targeted with your approach as well, because it's very easy, I think, with running and a lot of things to think, oh, I've got to spend a lot of time running or doing this. And actually, if you followed the right training program, it's about, okay, well, I'm going to do some sprint sessions working on pushing my lactate threshold this session, and then I'll do this on another session, and then I'll do my easy long run on that session. And then it's much more efficient because we're all really busy and it's hard to fit things in. But if you can, find the right approach and be targeted, that I think can also be part of the battle as well, because then it doesn't take so long. Yeah, and I think also learning to say no. Yeah, and that's something that I work with women all the time. It's hard. When you feel good at a job as well. If you're going for promotion, for example, it's really hard to say no. So what would be your top tips for that? It's sort of looking at your values. And I know that's such a wishy-washy answer, but it really is, who do you want to become? And it's like becoming her. What does she do? And if it's, well, she gives 110% of work, but she absolutely does an hour to herself in the evening where possible. Or, I have in my calendar every Sunday that I want to do a face mask and I want to redo my nails, because for me, that helps me feel put together. And it feels like a stolen half an hour to an hour where I get to just focus on myself. And it's the smallest thing that feels really inconsequential, but just being able to balance it out and saying things that when you're training or for your mental health or for whatever reason, I'm not drinking, or I'm not going to stay at parties or dinner events beyond midnight, or I want to be in bed by midnight. So that means I get X number of hours of sleep. And it is a lot easier to say no than people think. It's just finding the ways to do it. You said about sleep and mental health. So what sort of links and correlations do you find between sleep and mental health? Ooh, so many. So a lot of the problems that we have can be regulated by sleep. So if you're dealing with anxiety, depression, those kinds of feelings, getting a good night's sleep, of uninterrupted sleep if possible, massive, massive win for curving off those feelings. But also there's things like, weight gain, skin issues, gut issues. There's the thing called the vagus nerve that connects your stomach to your brain. And eating oddly can change your brain chemistry a little bit and make you feel more depressed and low. Same thing with sleep. If you're not sleeping enough, your hunger patterns change, and it could either slow, and so therefore you feel less hungry, or it can go the opposite way and your body's trying to fuel constantly because you're exhausted, and so you're going through all the very easy, like quick sugar grabs, quick carbohydrate grabs, which aren't a problem in and of themselves, but too much of them, obviously, same with anything, becomes a bit more challenging. And then that has it's a vicious cycle. It becomes an endless cycle, really. And something else that you talked about with some of the clients that you work with then is about being more assertive. So say in the workplace, how, like you touched on earlier, often, young girls are conditioned to not being bossy, labeled as bossy. And then if you want to move into, say, leadership roles, you need to be assertive. So how do you suggest people can overcome those barriers?
Be weird. Be weird. Be weird. Like the femininity is your superpower. And I think definitely I felt that I had to present a particular way, be suited and booted in all these dark colours. Not that that's necessarily masculine, but I felt that I, had to go out with the boys, go to the pub and be quite rude with them and tell them their place. And they were like, oh, good banter, one of the boys. I don't want to be one of the boys. I'm not one of the boys. I want to be one of the girls. Girls are amazing. And I think it's this idea of fostering your own voice. And so I know myself and I'm unapologetic for it. And so it's the idea of, if I'm sure about my opinion, fighting the urge to caveat. And I think we see it with women. I mean, I grew up with this a lot at school, that you someone go, oh, I like your top. You go, oh, it's from a charity shop. And it's like, why are you caveating?
Oh, it's old.
Yeah. Oh, it's just someone else's. It's like, stop. It's like, I like your hair. Oh, it's a mess. I haven't brushed it today. It's like, relax. Just thank you. Take it. So small things, taking the compliment, having a stack of evidence. And it's sort of, it's called a, evidence timeline, which is not the title that I gave it, but anyway, evidence timeline. And it's essentially stacking physically the evidence that you've achieved. So you can take 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, whatever timeline feels comfortable for you. And whether it's online or printed, physically writing out, well, I achieved this on my own and I did this and I did that, and essentially writing all the wins chronologically, and suddenly you see them. Having a post-it note on your desk or by your bed every time you achieve something or something positive was said, or just having it. And so that stacks up, because our brain is naturally negatively biased, again, to keep us safe. So if you have a jar where you can see all these colourful post-it notes of good things that have happened, you're like, oh, actually, you tend to forget a lot of the small things, but like, actually, quite a few things have gone right for me. And so having that timeline is a really helpful way of rebuilding that confidence. When you're saying that you can't, you have evidence that you can. And also, let's not forget that when it comes to jobs, most boys, and I don't mean to hate on boys because we love men as well, but most boys tend to hit about 40 to 60% of the criteria on the list, and they go, yeah, I can do that. And they just do it. They say yes and work it out later. Whereas women will go, I've only hit 80% of the criteria. I'm not going to be a good fit. Go, say yes and work it out later. So many business owners I've met have been like, yeah, well, I just pitched my business and they said yes, and suddenly I had to work out how to do it. Same, You're
not going to hit the ground running necessarily, are you?
No.
It's all part of growth and learning, but it's quite scary as well. So what other topics do you tend to work with?
So it's imposter syndrome, burnout prevention, and leadership development. And it's sort of finding that vision and identity, and again, becoming her. It's the very small things that happen every single day that make up the rest of your life. Because if you look back, a lot of coaching, and this really frustrates me, will say, we can change your life in 3 months. No, you cannot. No, you cannot. If you started the gym and you said, I'm going to have abs in 3 months, you would be eating nothing but rice cakes in order to get to those abs. And that is a miserable existence. And it takes, good things take time, and it takes 6 months to a year. So it's also being kinder to yourself in that process.
Yeah, being kind.
Yeah.
Are there any sort of main takeaways that you would want any of our viewers or listeners to take away from our chat that we've had just now about, particularly the things that you work with?
Yeah, I'd say embrace failure, and find opportunities to fail more regularly, and make it your mission to fail more regularly. Because, if you're high achieving, successful, you've been told that you are X, Y, or Z, you attach, or I definitely have, you attach yourself to an identity. I'm good at this, therefore I cannot fail. And actually failure, we always talk about it, failure is where you learn the most. You don't learn a huge amount by having a perfect track record. And find me anyone who's successful who has a perfect track record. But learning to fail more and trying new things and being bad at those things is exciting, and you should do it. And also doing hobbies that you're not good at just because you want to do them. You used to dance as a child, dance. You used to paint. So what if it's ugly? Just go for it. And if you're not finding that balance for yourself and you're not doing something for yourself, who's going to do it for you?
So failure then. Yes. Failure is tough.
Yeah.
Can you think of the first time you failed at something?
Oh, so many examples. I mean, I failed today. So the first time I failed at something that I can remember is probably when I went for a scholarship for sixth form. And I was told by my parents, who obviously have years of life experience, they said, go for these subjects because you're more likely to get it because you're good at these things. And I said, no, I'm going to do this subject because I want to do this subject, and failed miserably at that. And the disappointment that I felt then was really embarrassing, because I would always been told, you are intelligent and therefore will do well. And here I was in an exam setting, and I failed at the exam to prove that I was intelligent enough to get the scholarship, which is silly because that's just not what it is, but that's how I felt. And then failing to get into the university I wanted to get into, and then failing corporate, which is, burning out and not drinking the Kool-Aid and not going up the ladder and not doing those things. Failing at relationships. I had an engagement that fell apart a few years ago, and that was a huge failure that wasn't necessarily my fault. We won't get into that, but I did feel, I had my life sort of tick, tick, tick. I'd done everything that was expected of me. Good university, good school, good job, good degree, all in the wrong order. Found the guy, white picket fence was inbound, dog inbound, children inbound, collapsed, massive failure. Failure at being myself in this business, because when you're setting up something that is so linked to me, my personality, what I know, what I do, being bad or rejected at what I do is like being rejected for being me, and it's not, because there is a separation. But that feeling is hard to swallow every single time. And this morning was one of those examples.
So what happened this morning, if you want to share that with us?
So earlier this year, last December, I'd gone in to speak to a company that was up in Manchester, and I'd done a presentation day, and I often do these where it's a taster day and they tend to cover the train fares and I do it for free. And the idea was afterwards I'd speak to the CEO and we'd organise potential coaching for his team. It's an all-female team, more or less. And so the idea would be that I'd be able to give them some tools and it was going to pan out. And in my head, it was perfect. Contract was ready, knew what I was going to do. And we tried to jump on a call before Christmas, and it was just that week before Christmas and obviously busy. So I said, no worries, we'll do it in January. I sent my email this morning saying, hi, would love to check in, would love to jump on a call. Email immediately back, not a business need at the moment, no thank you. And it was just a bit of a punch to the gut.
It is, isn't it? But it's nothing personal.
But it's nothing personal, but it feels personal. Yeah. And that is also part of a personality matrix. Have you heard of DISC personality profiling?
No, I haven't.
Myers-Briggs?
Yes, I heard of Myers-Briggs, yeah.
So Myers-Briggs offers a more holistic approach to personality profiling. And so it gives you weaknesses, strengths, how you interact with other people, etc. DISC profiling is the precursor to it, and it's a bit more to do with sort of management styles, high pressure situations, and it focuses on 4 main personalities. So driver or dominance, and if we're doing chefs, that's like the Gordon Ramsays of the world going, you're an idiot sandwich, big picture, needs to be done quickly, has to move quickly, doesn't want to be stuck in the details. I is your influence or your inspire personalities, and those are your salespeople. It's about social currency. Chef-wise, that's going to be your Jamie Olivers, bringing you into the kitchen. It feels personal. Then S is sort of steadfastness, and that's maybe your Mary Berries, so much more meticulous about things. Very good at what they do, wants to be left alone, takes a bit more time to unpack things, wants to consider. Much slower so D and I sit on the top of the matrix, and they're fast paced and probably not very detail to attention's not very high. And then on the S and C side, there's much more detail in it. So you've got steadfastness, which is Mary Berry, and C is your compliance personality. So those are the people in compliance, your lawyers, the people who care about where the comma goes because it changes the subclause. Not my gig at all, but very important people. And that's your Heston Blumenthal. So, how do we unpack this? And I've lost the point where I'm talking about this. Oh, yes, sorry. Back in. And I sit very much on the I side of that. And so one of the weaknesses or challenges that I'm learning to overcome is this fear of social rejection and failure, which is ridiculous because I'm a confidence coach. And, the imposter syndrome comes out because I go, here's the thing that I'm doing, and I've separated myself from the business, but it is my baby, and it's the thing that I've poured however many months into, and I'm really proud of the work I've done, and let's work together because I think it could benefit you. And they go, no. And I go, oh, you don't care about me. It's not important. And it isn't personal. But that's something that I'm learning every single day as well while doing this job.
So how do you switch then your mindset to not taking it personally? Because if it's not a business need or there's no budget for it, how do you accept it is genuinely that as opposed to something personal?
So the more proactive side would be asking for feedback, which I haven't done in this instance. But I while I was coming over here, I listened to that playlist that I mentioned earlier, which is the affirmations, the positive music, the tapping. And I just did a quick EFT, emotional freedom tapping technique sequence for 12 minutes to just shift my state of mind. I've decided I'm going to go journal about it when I get back. And also realizing that there are so many companies and so many people in this country, let alone the world, that I can speak to. So there'll be other opportunities, but it's a lot easier to take now. Whereas a month ago, I had 2 rejections on one day, and that took me out for a few days. I was exhausted for the end of the year. And I just said, this is ridiculous, because I'd put all these hopes and dreams on them. And just realizing that it's fine, and we just got to set up again. It'll be fine.
It is hard, but it's a stepping stone, isn't it? And if you get feedback, then there's something that you can learn or develop. But it is so hard asking for feedback.
It is, and I see this quote everywhere: rejection is redirection. And I think until you've experienced it, it doesn't really land. But I keep saying this or better. So, okay, this wasn't the right thing. And if I'm being honest, they probably weren't the ideal client either. But rejection is redirection. So this might lead on to something else, which will be better. And I'll go, oh, thank goodness that didn't work out, because then this wouldn't have happened.
And so you mentioned emotional freedom technique.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so EFT is a technique to regulate your nervous system. So your nervous system is made up of 2 main systems: the sympathetic nervous system, which is the one responsible for your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest system. I've said system so many times just then. And EFT works on essentially accessing the ends of your nerves across your body. So you've got nerves obviously all over your body, and you've got areas which are more accessible than others. They're called meridian lines. And so you'll see people doing this technique, and I'll just roll these up for you. So it starts with your wrists.
Okay.
And so you start tapping on your wrists.
Okay.
Or you can start tapping fingers on your wrist, whatever feels better to you. And you set the intention. So you'd say, I'm going to reduce this anxiety and I'm going to feel better about it. And so what's happening is you're essentially gently massaging your nervous system. So your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. And then when you're ready, you start different affirmations, and it goes on to temples, and you go, okay, I will achieve well today, or I'm going to do fine, or, this anxiety is going. And then you tap into your inner eyebrows. So tap in again. Same thing, same affirmation. I feel good. Today's going to be a good day. Then under the eye, same thing. Above the lip, above the chin, and then collarbones. And you repeat the cycle. And if you want, you can do the apex of the crown as well. But you repeat the cycle. And essentially what happens is you're gently massaging your nervous system into action, and your parasympathetic nervous system goes, I'm relaxed. And it's the same sort of motion as rocking a baby to sleep. That's what it is. It's why we like those kinds of feelings. And it's an amazing way to shift your state. So if you are feeling particularly lost in your feelings and you need a way to stim or to self-regulate, that's an amazing way to self-regulate. And I do this on the tube, shamelessly on my way to meetings, tapping away, and people look at me as if I'm insane, but it's London, so get with the program. And it is proven, so it comes from traditional Chinese medicine and other, I think it's Ayurvedic is how I say Ayurvedic teachings as well. And so there's lots of ancient science and history behind it and reasons behind it. And we've kind of lost the habit of doing it. But it's a way of kind of gently shaking yourself to relax.
I think you also mentioned before the show actually about someone who you worked with whose son was neurodivergent.
Yes.
And it helped. Do you want to share a little bit about that as well?
Yeah. So he has autism, and I think it's Asperger's. And he essentially would have these meltdowns when he felt frustrated. And so he would stim a lot by tapping his palms to kind of calm himself down. And I suggested to his dad that he tried this EFT technique because it's a way of self-regulating and again adding agency for the person experiencing it. And he found that it actually reduced the meltdowns significantly because, doing this until it feels better can take maybe an hour, but it gave his son the opportunity to self-regulate, find the words, and also kind of it's that pattern interrupt. It's redirecting the focus and energy away from the upsetting moment or the trigger, and going towards something that feels better, more comfortable, more confident, etc.
So brainwaves, that's another really exciting topic that you mentioned. So tell me about brainwaves.
So brainwaves are really exciting because we know the different frequencies that you need to listen to or to have sort of playing in the background in order to tap into them. And I think it's one of those cheat codes to tapping into focus, to better sleep, to creativity. And I just don't think people talk about it enough. And I don't think people realize how easy it is to get into that state. If you've ever been to a spa and they're playing that ooh music and you kind of walk around and you do the spa voice because you're relaxed, you can do that at home and instill that sense of calm in your house as well. And the three main brainwaves that I will probably tell you in depth about today are theta waves, delta waves, and alpha waves. So alpha waves are the ones that we tend to know are associated to flow state, and that's sort of that hyper focus, that itchy brain feeling when you're really stuck in a task and you look up the clock and it's 2 hours have gone. It's amazing. Theta waves are the most exciting bit and the bit that I like working with the most because they are responsible for tapping into your subconscious. So theta waves are where your deepest sort of insecurities lie, but also your greatest creativity comes from. And we see that with artists, musicians. They say this was the worst time of my life ever and the most incredible album comes out of it. And a lot of our fears, doubts, feelings of uncertainty, imposter syndrome, burnout, etc., that sits in that subconscious. And if you can tap into those brain waves or listen to that music and talk about those feelings, you can separate the sting from the emotion and then process the experience.
So from the rejection that we talked about earlier, you can separate a breakup or a rejection at work. Yeah. You can separate it from emotion.
I mean, that's not to say that you don't feel the feelings, but it's not as devastating. And you can use that can be part of your evening routine as well, that you listen to delta waves, which is the third one. Delta waves are the brain waves that are recorded in ECGs when you're asleep. And they're really long and slow, whereas alpha waves are a lot more tight and high energy. And that makes sense depending on if you think about what you're actually doing during it. And so you can listen to relaxing music or solfeggio sounds, which is essentially chakra-aligned music or spa music. And you can tap into that feeling of relaxation. And the reason that I want to talk about brainwaves is because you can hack that for any time in your day. You can do that in the car, you can do it at work, you can do it for meetings, you can do anything, have it at low level in the background. In the background at low level is the correct way around. And I think it can really change your life. And it's a quick way if you struggle to meditate as I do, and you struggle to sit down and sort of breathe and think and ponder and all these things, listening to this kind of music in the background is incredible. But what I want to show you is essentially some results from taking breaks between meetings. So I hope that's bright enough.
Yeah, I can see that. So for any of our anyone who's listening to this on Spotify or in any of the other podcast platforms, as opposed to seeing, so anyone watching this will be put on the screen, but anyone who is listening to this, can you talk me through what you're showing me?
Absolutely. So on the top row, you've got 4 scans of the same person's brain. And on the top row, it shows you levels of stress. So the lower the level of stress is green and blue on the screen. Okay. And the higher the level of stress is yellow or red. And so this study was conducted with people who entered 2 hours of meetings. The first row is for people who did 2 hours back-to-back meetings. And you can see from brain scan 1 to brain scan 4 that the level of stress goes, okay, more stressed, very stressed, less stressed. And the second row shows you the impact of having a 10-minute break in between those half an hour meetings. So meeting 10 minutes, meeting 10 minutes. And the brain scans show a blue-green brain, which is low stress, and then a blue-green brain, which is less stress, a blue-green brain, and a blue-green brain. And you can introduce these frequencies, this binaural beats, these these theta waves, music that relaxes you, in between your meetings, in between stressful situations, when you're context switching between things, and hack your brain so it knows, I get to relax now. Because the less stress you have day to day, the healthier you are, the better you sleep, the happier you are. It has a huge impact. And like I said, I think it's a massive cheat code. Massive cheat code.
So, I mean, often meetings are just, they're virtual, they're Teams or Zoom, and it's 2 hours scheduled. So is there anything you can do in that 2 hours to not be in that stressed brain state and in the less stressed brain state?
Well, if you don't need to be on screen, I'd probably say take yourself off screen so you don't feel like you have to perform.
It is tiring. It is exhausting, isn't it? But you do feel like
Yeah.
You have to perform. And if you have a whole day of meetings and you're on screen all the time,
and you have to do the head nod. I think also saying no to meetings you don't need to be in. Do you actually need to be in that meeting? Will it have an impact on your career? I think if the answer is no, tap out. You don't need to be in. And if anywhere, I feel very strongly about this, if anywhere is going to say, well, you weren't at that meeting, therefore it's not the right place for you, because having something or having a meeting where you can remove 5 or 10 minutes from it is a huge win. And given how easy and accessible meetings are now, you don't need to be in all of them. And I think everyone should be on the same page on this. But going back to what you can do, breath work, turning your screen off, getting up regularly. So depraning, whether that's every half an hour, every 15 minutes, whatever it needs. So you're actually waking yourself up a bit, making sure you're sipping water. Again, really small things to help you through. And asking questions, or even saying, I can only stay for an hour, and tapping out afterwards, because why do you need to be on, if it's not a town hall, the town halls were always so long, but you know, what do you actually gain from a town hall? This is my corporate days. I'm like, oh, don't do the meetings. Yeah.
So, and drinking water, I think, is really important as well for staying hydrated, because I think a lot of the time it's very easy for us to not stay hydrated. Can you tell me a little bit about the brain and water and hydration and the effects on that?
Well, so the brain is about 80% water, which is baffling to think about. And something that I learned about drinking that was horrifying is the sweeter the drink, the lower your brain sits in the skull, because it's trying to access water that's in your body and bring it up. And so if it's closer to the base of your skull, the more water it brings. And I think that's horrifying to think about. So making sure that you drink water, even if you're on a flight, you know, you should be drinking it, they say about half a litre every half an hour. I mean, you'll be queuing for that loo constantly, but just making sure that you're sipping through water throughout the day. And you can get those water bottles, those enormous ones that have little time stamps for you. Yeah. And if you can stomach that, I'd recommend. But just making sure that you're staving off the headaches, making sure that you're giving yourself that break. And it's actually a really good opportunity to say, actually, I'm just going to nip to the kitchen and grab a tea, a glass of water, whatever it is, and come back. That also works with that brain scan to add more rest, give yourself a break, move away from the context that you're in, and then come back in refreshed.
So, Delphine, what's next?
What isn't next? TED Talk in the future. Hello, any organisers, hit me up. I'm working a lot this year on getting more onto podcasts, because I just find it really fascinating with the work that you do and others do that I just want to get involved with. Building the business, seeing more how I can make more of an impact, getting more involved with charities and organisations. I'm starting with an apprenticeship organisation at the moment, which I'm really excited about, because it's getting young people skilled up before they burn out, so they don't leave at the age of 34 with, wife, kids, dog, picket fence, etc. So really excited for that, and releasing quite a few new products at the moment.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely incredible.
Thanks
just hearing about so much science and just little small changes that I think we can all make in various ways throughout our day that will just help us navigate everything and avoid burnout. So thank you. Really appreciate you joining us. So if anyone who wants to find out more about you and your work and work with you, can you tell us how we can find you?
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Confidence with Del, on LinkedIn at Delphine Legat. I'll send all these over so you can see in the show notes, and also on my website www.delphinelegat.com. Just message. I'd love to jump on a call, see how it all goes, and get involved.
Fantastic. And you're actually offering a special introductory rate as well. So if any of our viewers and listeners, there'll be a code that we will put in the description.
Yes.
That they can use to get a special introductory rate to start working with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really excited because I'll be sharing my free How to Stop Overthinking course with all of your viewers and listeners, and also another one on how to find femininity in a male-dominated industry.
Fantastic. That's super exciting. I look forward to seeing them both and reading them both. So thank you for your time. Good luck for the future.
Thank you.
And really look forward to seeing what happens next.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're absolutely welcome.